You know, Sam, one thing I enjoy is you call me fresh, because you get to be my age, you don't hear that much anymore.
Yeah.
I'm usually wilted. Yeah,
Doug. All he's missing is the E.
Dougie.
Fresh.
All right, Sam.
Let's get started.
Let's get to work.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. On this episode of Sam's Garage, Sam and the Lokar team complete the LS Classics top-end kit on the '69 Camaro. Sam and Doug installed the rear brakes and brake lines for the '57 Thunderbird. Action Off-Road adds some tool storage and safety items on the Can-Am side-by-side. And Bob Douglas helps Sam with relocating the rear axle on the Thunderbird. The team wraps up the LS Classics top-end kit from Lokar Performance, which will provide a vintage Chevy vibe to your resto mod while using modern LS3 components. Included in the kit is a new intake system, valley plate, distributor, and coil relocation kit.
There you go, Travis. All right, so this week what Travis and I are going to do on the '69 Camaro is install the LS Classic top-end kit, which consists of a valley pan, the intake manifold, our distributor that looks real,
Yes.
and we're going to run our wires.
Yes, sir. So I've got the valley plate here, made in USA, baffled, so no oil won't come through the port. How about let's stick it on?
Very nice, billet aluminum. Don't forget the gasket.
So this O-ring, I'm going to install this one because it needs to be stretched just a little bit. So you just kind of get it out a little bit, you know, bend it around. But you can't let Kevin do this because he breaks these.
He's
over.
aggressive,
He is
isn't he?
very aggressive. So you just bend it out just a little bit, follow the line.
Now, if you guys have a DOD engine and you're doing a DOD delete, they're going to want you to, a lot of people are going to want you to tap the holes and plug them up instead of just using the Lokar DOD delete valley pan. They actually have one with the plugs, O-rings. You simply install it, put the bolts back in, and you're good to go.
We also do a oil pressure relocation kit, converts it to the pan instead of the Gen 3 would be on top, and the Gen 4 would be really close to the valley plate. So we relocate that to the bottom of the pan.
You've already done it on this one?
Yes.
And what this does here is it covers that hole that would normally be there.
Exactly.
Got it. So Travis, what happens to the knock sensors?
So in the Gen 3, obviously we can't put them in the valley plate here. Several companies offers relocation kits for the knock sensors, so that you will have to do that.
What we're doing here is we're marking the spark plug wires before we put it through the distributor so we know which end is which, because you're not going to be able to ohm these out. And we've got the intake manifold completely assembled on the bench because it's much easier that way. Next we'll be installing the distributor first, and then we're going to put on the intake manifold, run our fuel lines, install the electricals, and hopefully we'll run.
So when you're running these plug wires, you're going to run them through your distributor and then out to your spark plugs. We include boots. We don't pre-install them because we don't know how long your wires are going to be. You need to make sure you have a good lubricant, like a Seal Glide, or you'll be frustrated as all get out. So just put it on there, pull it through, and save yourself a lot of worry, and you can just clean it up later.
I really like these spark plug boot protectors. Is this your new company's brand?
Yeah, this is part of our Made For You line. So we do a lot of the wire separators, braided covers for wires that you see on the car. And these boot protectors are really nice.
Those are really nice. They're thick. They give you a lot of protection. They're a little bit longer. I really like them.
Yeah, with these stainless headers and being so tight in this car, it It's kind of a cool old school feel too.
Absolutely. Now, is this only come in black, or do you offer other colors?
We do. We've got several colors. We've got black, white, red, blue.
Guys, that looks awesome. You gotta admit, I mean, look at it. It looks like a traditional old school big block, especially with the ports on the exhaust manifolds, really finishes it off, you know?
It sure does. Put the Summit Racing cam, valve springs and all that in it, gaskets, oil pump. They sell some great products.
They have a complete cam kit for these cars,
Yes.
valve springs, everything they have for this car.
It really sounds like a big block now.
Yeah, it really does. Smells like one too.
It sure
I think for
does.
Christmas, I'm gonna have to do this at the Cadillac.
Well, maybe Santa will visit you.
Oh, that'll be awesome. You better bring your sleigh.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug get ready to tackle the rear brakes and install all the hard brake lines on the 57 Thunderbird. The new rear brakes also have an integrated emergency brake just like modern cars. With the brake lines installed, this T-Bird will be stopping on a dime.
So last week, Doug and I did the front brake system. We hung the calipers, the rotors, and even got our brake lines in place. This week, we're gonna be doing the rear brakes along with all the hard lines front to rear.
Yeah, Sam, doing the hard lines just takes a lot of time. You got to, the same old statement, measure twice, cut once. We got to go to show them how to make the bends, how to flare everything. It's really not difficult to do. It just take your time.
The double flare is the most important part of this entire job.
It is. You don't want the brakes to fail.
Yep. Then we're gonna make new hard lines for the brakes. I need a union, I need a T for the front because I'm gonna be coming off one off the master, T into both front wheels. Then I'm gonna go back to the rear, but I need a union for the rear because I don't have long enough brake lines to make it out back. So because everything I'm dealing with is metric, I've got these little pieces that go on the frame. It bolts up to the frame right here. This goes to my Willwood Dash 3, and this is my brake line adapter, except everything I have is metric. This is standard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some standards, cut off the ends, use the ends that I need on this piece and my union, and then I'm gonna use the metric ends on everything that's metric, and that should get me good.
What we've got here is a little manifold block, and so what we did is we transfer punched a hole and we drilled and tapped it. And what you want to do is you want to make sure the manifold block is loose because we're going to go ahead and run the line that we just made. Now it's real important when you're doing these things, leave everything loose, and then on the line itself for the brakes you can get in with your wrenches. Make sure you don't have a real tight bend here. You're going to need to get in with your wrenches, have enough clearance to tighten everything up. So when you put it together, don't make your spaces too tight.
Now, when I go to cut this, I need this to stay stationary. Put the fitting in the vise, tighten this guy. That's gonna tighten my line, and then I can cut the line, and it's not gonna spin on me. And when I cut the line, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna wanna push the metal in towards the center. And what that does is it creates a small hole. Well, we have to use a tool to go into that hole. You have to open that hole up. So I'm gonna use a pick just like this. The most important thing when making a brake line is you have to have a double flare. That's gonna basically make the wall thickness a little bit thicker by bending it over on itself. Put it in our tool, which is gonna go right here. That flange is how much you want material sticking out of your tool. The second step is gonna be to remove that piece, and all that did was basically roll the tip down onto itself, making that wall thicker. Then you're gonna take your taper tool, and this is where you're gonna actually make the flare. When you're doing this, if you don't do a double flare, what's gonna happen is you're gonna crack the wall. If you crack a wall, that's gonna be a leak. This is under 1200 plus PSI. This is your brake, so you do not wanna do this incorrectly. Brake line, it's gonna come off the caliper with a Dash 3 fitting. We got this union that's gonna bolt up to the Moser 9-inch, 2 top bolts. We've got our brake line. This is to allow the rear end to move up and down, so this is gonna be welded onto the car. Then once that is done, we're gonna run 2 brake lines from the union to each caliper, and then we're gonna run a brake line from the union, the hose, all the way back to the master cylinder. We should be done in roughly 17 hours. That really wasn't so bad. You know, usually brake lines can be difficult, but because you're here, it was much smoother.
Yeah, I know, Sam. You say it wasn't that bad. I'm just looking at what time it is right now and how long it took us.
Yeah,
It's a good thing we're experts.
not bad. 11 hours won't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
And Joe, I've heard of restoration. If you've got a vehicle and you've neglected it, it's got some rust, or you want to buy a used vehicle, it's got some rust, what do you have for them?
Typically, someone would come in, let's say, with a 5, 6, 7-year-old vehicle, and they'll say, you know, gee, I just heard about this now. I would like to protect my vehicle and begin an oil-based rust-proofing maintenance program. But is there anything I can do, like, what's the most aggressive approach? How can I make up for all those years of doing nothing? And so what we do is, if they come in with a 7, 8-year-old vehicle, we'll take the rust down to a surface rust, and then we'll hit it with 2 coats of our own acid, which is basically going to neutralize that rust. It's not going to kill all the rust, but what we don't kill, we will deprive of oxygen when we apply our NHOU oil undercoating. And then what you do is you come back every year and we will, you know, continue that maintenance program. You want to hit that rust with acid the first time and just try to make up for all the years you haven't done anything.
That's a great idea. And for those of you who purchased a used car that didn't have any undercoating on it and it's got some rust, but you want to be proactive and add some safety to that vehicle and add some value to that vehicle, the restoration is going to be a perfect example for you guys.
Welcome back to more Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. The Action Off-Road team is back to help Sam install some Peace of Mind products on the Can-Am side-by-side. They'll be installing new door bags to store tools while out on the trail, as well as lights for safety. Action Off-Road also has some cool tips on how to secure your side-by-side when transporting.
Well, guys, our side-by-side project's really coming along, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's
Looks
good.
awesome.
It really does.
It's really good. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to add some safety and peace of mind. Safety in the way of whip lights so that people can see you when you're out in the trail, and peace of mind in the way of some tools and storage that you would need when you break down out in the trail.
Absolutely. You don't want to be out in Hatfield, McCoy, somewhere that's way far off and, you know, break a belt or something and not be able to fix it.
That Hatfield McCoy sounds cool. I got to go there one day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or you go to eat and nothing in the car, so you can pack storage bags full of food and whatnot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's get started and install these parts.
All right, so a couple things here I want to show you guys. When you're using this tool, when you thread it in, make sure the ball bearings face towards the clutch. Otherwise, it'll be locked in. You won't be able to use it. So, it's a quick tip. Also, make sure this ring is locked into the protrusion on that clutch. All right, so we're tight now, and we're basically gonna bring it here and pull this belt tool down. Make sure you keep your fingers clear from everything when you're doing this, because it slips off. You'll get your finger caught in the wheels there, and you do not want to do that. And now we can remove the belt. These belts are directional. If you notice, the rotation goes this way. When it's spinning, it should be going towards the front of the machine from the top, like this. So make sure that belt always goes back on the right way. If you ever blow a belt on the trail, you guys, it would be nice to have a piece of Scotch-Brite or maybe a very fine sandpaper. It leaves rubber residue on the clutch sheaves, and you'll make sure you get all that stuff clean before a new belt on.
So the last thing you guys want to do is get to the trail with your family, your rig, everything in the trailer, and open the door and realize that your rig has bounced around and maybe even gotten damaged. At ActionOffroad.com, Rhino USA sells a kit that comes with 2 straps rated for 1,500 pounds, no more than a vehicle weight of 2,000, and 4 E-Track plates. As you can see, this is something similar you would see with a tow truck driver lately towing vehicles or using the wheels. So what you want to do is use this system, make sure that rig is secure in your trail so that when you get to where you're going, you're going to be nice and happy and you'll have all the time in the world to have the fun with the family. All right, so what does it entail to put these whips on?
All right, so you're gonna need some mounts, obviously. We got some mounts here, universal white lips. And you also need your whip lights, obviously. And also, we need some power.
How hard is it to wire these things up?
Super easy, they're plug and play. Connectors plug in, they screw in, and then you find your 12-volt power supply, hook it up, you're good to go.
That is a lot of LED lights incorporated in this little whip. That's gotta be bright.
It is, it's bright, it's safe, and it looks good.
That's cool, let's do it. That's nice that they give you these rubber insulators to not scratch the rope bar.
That is nice.
And you got black clamps, black heads. That's why it's very important to be careful what tools you use, because you don't want to scratch your new parts and hardware. You know, you got a lot of investment in these side-by-sides, and you got to think of safety, especially when you're out in the trail with the family. And that's what we did today with a couple of items that we installed, right?
Yes, so the light whips are very important for visual safety. So when you're on the trail, you have a lot of peaked hills you crest over. This is for the person coming the opposite way can see you. So
Yeah,
it's
because usually
a lot
one-lane
safer.
trails, right?
Yes, correct.
All right, and when you guys are installing those tool bags, make sure you use flat washers where needed so you got good clamping onto the door. And don't forget the tools and those straps. They're gonna get you to the trail in one piece and everybody's gonna have a great weekend.
Bob Douglas from Rod End Supply is back in the garage to help Sam with relocating the rear end of the Thunderbird. After building the new custom frame, they needed to push the rear axle back 2 inches. Check out Rod End Supply for everything you need on your own projects at home.
All right, so if you missed us last week, what we're going to be doing with Bob Douglas from Rod End Supplies, we're going to be moving the axle back 2 inches because we're really not centered in the wheel well. And last week we showed you what parts we're going to be using to make up our links. This week we did. Now, these ends were TIG welded in place. I had my good friend Forrest, who's a master welder, weld these up for us. And then as you can always tell, you can see where I've painted something because you'll always be runs. That way it's signature to Sam. And then we're going to go ahead and install them.
I love that.
So Bob, I would look at this and look at it and think that it's a copper rod, but it's not.
I'm going to call it a plating, but it's not really a plating, but it's over a steel rod. That way it keeps it from rusting.
There you go. So
And-
before you use it, you would have to sand off the end, or sand off the whole thing.
Sand off the whole thing, and you want to make sure you do that because that way if there's any corrosion on it, it's not incorporated when you're welding. That way if there's any corrosion on it anyhow, then all of a sudden that's where you get your little bubbles and splatters and stuff when you're TIG welding. So that way it keeps it all clean and everything's good. And you want to make sure that the weld has got great integrity.
There you go. All right, so you can see that the axle is further back on this side. We take a measurement from here to here. We've got 30.5, 16 on center. Then when you come to this side, the side we have not installed our bars in yet, 30.5, and we are at 17. Okay, so we need to go back. We're gonna put these 2 bars in. That's gonna put us back. We should be straight. We're gonna double check our measurements when we have all 4 bars in. Then we wanna check our pinion angle. You want 3.5 to 4 degrees. So our new bushed ends are just a little bit less wide or more narrow than the ones we took out. It's okay to take a spacer, washer, and fill that gap by simply putting it in between the housing and the bushing, run your bolt through, and you should be good to go. That way you're not squeezing the brackets together. Whenever you guys are installing aftermarket shocks, most of the time they're going to be adjustable. You want to do is not just install them, you want to kind of put them in the middle so you have a base. So you want to go all the way left, that's going to be soft. Count the clicks all the way to the right where it stops, which is going to be full hard. I have 10. Go back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts you in the middle. Nice base to start with. So within a 1/2 inch is where our rear end is. We have enough adjustability in those links to move that rear end forward 1/2 inch. Now, we did take care of the mounting position of the shocks because we moved the rear end back. You can't have the shock at an angle or it's not going to work properly. So we moved it and straightened it out as well. The next thing you have to make sure to take care of is the pan arm. You got to move it forward also so there isn't an angle or a bind.
Right.
All right, because that's going to make the rear end go forward and backwards.
Correct.
Very important. I want to thank Bob Douglas from Rod End Supply once again for coming out to Sam's Garage and saving our butts. This was a big deal here.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Loved it.
Now we have adjustment. We've got high-end bushed ends on our rods. We have thicker links. That's going to be good for Doug because he's probably going to want to do 1 or 2 burnouts out there.
Sure.
So it's nice and strong.
It ought to be good for him now.
Yep. Hopefully you guys learned something today. The best part about the whole day is Bob or I are not wearing any anti-seize. That's a big plus.
Be sure to check out Sam's Garage on these other media platforms. Send us questions and feedback to info@samsgaragetv.com. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Sam's Garage. The 69 Camaro received the LS Classics top-end kit from Lokar Performance. The brakes are now completed on Doug's 57 Thunderbird project. Action Off-Road delivers again with extra storage and safety equipment for the side-by-side. And thanks to Rod End Supply, the rear axle for the Thunderbird is now in the proper position.